This book, Difficult Conversations, is a really useful tool to think about when and how to engage in difficult conversations. Oftentimes, when we're negotiating, we find the topic hard, and we sometimes then don't engage it in a way that's as constructive as possible. So, the ideas in this book are designed to give you some help with that. First off, they give us a definition about what a difficult conversation is. And of course, it's whatever you find to be difficult. Some of us have no trouble with certain topics. For others, it's a real struggle. The question of why something is difficult for us is usually explained by the fact that something is important about our sense of self is at stake. We feel vulnerable, or the outcome of this conversation is very important to us. This is important to our sense of self, and it's not just about whatever the topic is. It has somehow triggered greater implications for us. One of our problems with difficult conversations is whether even to engage in them. Because we often don't have the best skills about discussing difficult topics, some of us avoid the topic. That seems like the easiest way not to feel uncomfortable. Others times we may be confrontational about it. Again, this is sometimes derived from fear. The problem with either one of those responses is the problem isn't going to disappear. It's still going to be there. If you avoid the topic, you're depriving yourself and of whoever you're working with a chance to improve things. The problem with confrontation is you might make matters even worse. You might alienate people. And therefore, the solution isn't typically avoidance or confrontation, but learning how to manage them better. And if you think about this, you manage all kinds of things in your life. You manage, for better or for worse, you manage your time. You manage your friendships as balanced against your family, as balanced against work, as balanced against school. And if you think about it a little bit more dispassionately as I am a manager, I have finite resources, I have finite money, I have finite time, I have finite emotion. Think about it that way and say, okay, difficult conversations are just one more thing that, as an adult, I need to learn to manage. It's work. It's not like reading this book, you're going to have some great solution that says, oh my gosh, this isn't hard at all. This is just a walk in the park. Wrong. It's difficult for a reason. No matter how much you learn out of this book, for the rest of your life, you will have difficult conversations. But if you do it right and you really work at it, it will change how you view yourself. It will give you greater skills, greater serenity, greater self-confidence, and all of those things will help you cope better with difficult situations. So keep your expectations realistic. The biggest advice that the authors have here is to, from the very beginning, change how you think about these conversations. Instead of letting something annoy you or bother you or scare you until it builds up so that you just want to say something to this person, rethink that whole approach. Instead of, I am going to deliver my message is you can't do this to me. Stop. Shut up. Instead of looking at this as I'm going to deliver a message, look at this as I want to learn what that other person is thinking. Why is it that they're doing what they're doing? So instead of delivery, ask yourself, what can I learn here? This is a fundamental shift, and it's not easy. Now, the authors of this book identify what they call the 3 conversations. Many difficult conversations are about one of these three topics. The first one is, what happened? Why did this happen? What made this happen? Who screwed up that this happened? The problem with this conversation is we've already started from a position of judgment, as in, this was a bad thing or an awkward thing or a mistake. How did this happen? There's also a really great psychologist, Daniel Kahneman, who wrote about perception, and he identified something called what you see is all there is. This fallacy is you assume you have all the information, and therefore you're making a decision about it. That robs you of the notion that there may be information you don't know. And you know what? There probably is. So instead of assuming you have all the information and now you are a district attorney pinning down why did this happen this way, you need to rethink this and start from a learning position and find out information you don't already know. The second of the difficult conversations is the feelings conversation. And oftentimes we say things like, am I entitled to feel this way? Should I feel this way after he did that? Should I speak up about what happened? Should I just keep quiet? So sometimes we hide our feelings because we don't know if they're legitimate. And sometimes we just keep them inside us until we blow up. And blowing up is usually a destructive response, destructive of relationships. And the third difficult conversation that the authors identify is the identity conversation. And this is the conversation we sort of have internally about what this conversation means about who we are. If someone said that I messed up at work, does that challenge my sense of identity? I think of myself as a good employee. Someone who questions what I did, that challenges my sense of being a good employee. That's scary. It's scary not because people don't make mistakes, or you may have made a mistake once, or maybe you didn't make a mistake. That's not what's scaring you. What's scaring you is it's challenging your sense of identity, your sense that you are this good employee. So it's triggering something deeper than just what happened. On the feelings conversation, here's a few things that may be difficult. One is, some of us focus on logic and we ignore the underlying feelings. So we go through and just say, well, this is what happened, and this is what the rule is, and this is how one responds to this. And if someone is raising a feelings topic, the logic part of it isn't what needs to get addressed. Especially for those of you on the Myers-Briggs test who scored high on T or thinking, we tend to see all things in terms of logic, and we can often be blind to the underlying feelings that are generating behavior or comments. With mask itself in other guises. So instead of saying, you were late getting these papers to me, well, okay, now logically you may talk about, well, what was the deadline? Did you let that person know the deadline? Was it really late? That's a logic discussion. But maybe what's happening here is someone saying, I'm fearful that my managerial abilities will be put at stake here because I am afraid that you made a mistake that somehow will reflect poorly on me. It may make us feel confused and vulnerable, and many of us don't cope well with that. And then finally, there's another question of when should we even bring up our feelings? You know, sometimes, especially in a professional situation, it may not be appropriate to do that. So you sort of have to decide when should the topic of your feelings be raised, and if it is appropriate to raise it, when is it appropriate to raise it? It's certainly not all the time. Your feelings are sometimes not the most important thing going on at each moment, and you need to sort of choose when that conversation will be productive. The identity conversation, again, is one we have internally, and any when you think about your identity, think about how is it that you define yourself. Are you someone who's good at a particular skill? Are you someone who's a good friend? Are you someone who is kind? Are you someone who's efficient? We all have a picture of ourselves as being good at certain things, and it becomes part of how we define ourselves. So whenever something happens that challenges that self-image, that's an especially difficult discussion for us to have. Now, the problem with the what happened conversation is not just do we fall into Kahneman's trap of all we see is all there is, factually, we often make assumptions about other people's intentions. We do this all the time. He turned this in late on time. He did this just so I would look bad to the supervisor. We're assuming, number one, that we know their intentions, and often we assume that it's about us. She didn't even say hi when I walked by. Well, maybe she's trying to snub you. That's possible. It's also possible that she just had some bad news on the phone and she is just thinking to herself. It's possible she's not wearing her contacts today and she didn't see you. Like there's a whole bunch of possibilities, but we tend to initially make judgments about their intentions. You may be flat out wrong, or it may be that their intentions were mixed. And it's hard for us to understand that other people's intentions may be completely unrelated to us. We're not the center of the universe. So getting a little bit more grounded on the idea of you may not know what their intentions are, and this is another thing for you to explore from a learning stance rather than a delivery judgment stance. Our default often is to assign blame. So in the what happened conversation, we often start with whose fault is this? The problem with whose fault it is once you accuse someone else of being at fault, most of us in that situation become defensive. We start pointing out why it wasn't our fault. And it sometimes triggers senses of justice. How can you do this to me? This happened before to this other person and you didn't say anything. This isn't fair. It doesn't bring much learning. It doesn't bring us the best way of exploring how something really came about, all the factors that may have contributed to that, and what could happen differently in the future. Instead, it just involves defensiveness and avoidance. So in managing our feelings, the feelings conversation is the one that can make us feel the most vulnerable. But if we learn how to manage it better, we can figure out how to understand things better without jumping to blame or defensiveness or other unproductive responses. We can figure out when to discuss them, and we can be simply better managers.